Is your cloud bill out of control? CloudZero is building a platform that will let you analyze your cloud investment faster than ever before. You'll get accurate, granular visibility into your total cloud spend without the typical pitfalls of legacy cloud cost management tools like endless tagging or clunky Kubernetes support. CloudZero is how cloud-driven companies gain more financial control and predictability by driving immediate and ongoing savings. You can answer questions like, how can I save 20% of my cloud bill right now? Who are my most expensive customers? How much does this specific feature cost our business? Join companies like Rapid7, Drift, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today. Again, please visit cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and also the remote Cloudcast studios in Washington, D.C. Aaron, how are you, man?
I'm not too bad. Yeah, so I'm the remote studios this week. I'm actually running the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C. I'm doing it tomorrow. So as we record this, it is the day before. It's going to be an interesting event. I'm actually looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, that's. I know we've talked about it a little bit. You have been training for this for a long time. You're sort of like always training, but you haven't run a marathon in a while, so that's a big deal. You shaved your beard. That's a big deal. You got a lot of change going on for you, man.
See if it makes me faster, right? No, yeah, I did. I've only done one marathon, and it was this marathon 5 years ago. So yeah, this is only my second full marathon.
Yeah. So folks might be wondering, usually on Sundays I do the Sunday Perspective show, sort of something we picked up a year or two ago, it feels like. And folks might be wondering, Aaron, why are you on the Sunday Perspective show? The reason for this is not because I've completely run out of ideas, but more so because you and I have been having lots of conversations, several breakfasts here and there about kind of evolution of the Cloudcast, mostly because a lot of things feel like in the podcasting world have changed over the last, let's say, 3 years, basically since the pandemic started. And obviously now the economy is a little bit different than it was, how it affects tech. But give folks just a little bit of some of our thinking of like, what do we think has sort of changed and why we need to get the podcast and be a little more up to date, if you will.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, it really started during COVID. And another big factor here is the economies are changing as well, right? So, and between those two things, it really kind of changed just podcasting in general and certainly emerging tech and the VC markets. And so I think we're at a spot where we need to pivot a bit, and it's almost like Cloudcast 2.0, right? And
right.
Some of the things that have kind of hit, right? Like commutes have certainly reduced, right? Like we've kind of always had a joke of like, hey, we try and keep the podcast about the length of like a commute or going for a run or mowing the grass or walking the dog or something like that. But I mean, commutes have stopped, right? And something we're noticing is differences in lengths of show. Sometimes some short form shows are doing really, really well. And then some really long form shows, like 3 and 4 hour shows, are doing really well. So that whole idea of a 20 to 30 minute podcast has definitely become less important. And then VC funding, that's slowing down. That's nothing new. We've talked about that many times on this show. And then AI feels like the next wave. And we've ridden a couple waves on the podcast. There was the original OpenStack, CloudStack days, and then there was the big hyperscalers coming into being, and then there was Kubernetes and containers, and I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but AI kind of sort of is starting to feel like the next big one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we've talked about it a few times in the show. We're trying to figure out, what are the right balances for these things. So, well, let's do this in sort of normal Sunday Perspective format. Let's stop there for a second. We're going to come back after the break, and you and I are going to talk about some of the changes and evolutions that folks will be hearing over the next few weeks and few months of the show as we try and find a balance between, some of the new things that we're seeing just in podcasting that we think are interesting, that we think makes sense for the audience, and some stuff that we want to do as well. So we'll get to that right after the break. Today's episode of the Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog. Bring speed and scale to your security organization. Datadog Cloud Security Platform delivers real-time threat detection and continuous configuration audits across applications, hosts, containers, and cloud infrastructure. Built on top of the observability platform, Datadog brings unprecedented integration between security and DevOps aligned to shared organizational goals. As a listener to the Cloudcast, you can sign up for a free 2-week trial to see for yourself how Datadog can elevate your cloud infrastructure security posture by visiting datadog.com/security-cloudcast. Sign up now and receive a free Datadog t-shirt. That's datadog.com/security-cloudcast. Are you looking to stay ahead of the curve in the latest trends in enterprise tech? Look no further than the Breaking Analysis podcast with Dave Vellante. This data-driven program dives into the most important topics facing the enterprise tech industry today. With a data-first approach that leverages ETR's renowned surveys of IT decision-makers and insight from the CUBE community, Breaking Analysis delivers in-depth research on the most important topics facing technologists and IT buyers. Whether you're a business leader, an IT professional, investor, or just an avid follower of the industry, this podcast is a must-listen. Just search Breaking Analysis Podcast wherever you get your podcast and tune in today to stay ahead of the game in enterprise tech. And we're back. And, Aaron, we've been talking, you and I, like we mentioned at the top of the show, you and I have been talking for a while about kind of some new perspectives, not necessarily Sunday perspectives, but new perspectives on maybe what we want to do with the show. And, you hit on a number of things, at the top of the show in terms of just some of the kind of macro level things we've been seeing, partially as they impact not just the podcast, but really just kind of how people are getting information and, trends around technology and stuff that you and I are interested in and all those sort of things. One of the biggest things that we're hitting right now, which is sort of weird, given that on one hand, it feels like technology is kind of slowing down, but I feel like we're seeing this sort of a little different. So I'll start off with probably the biggest change that we're going to make to the show. And we're not exactly sure when we're going to roll this out. We've talked about doing it in November. It might happen sort of late November. It might happen in December. We're kind of working out a few of the logistics of it. But I think we're going to move from a Wednesday show and a Sunday show, so 2 shows a week, to moving to probably a Sunday show, a Tuesday show, and a Thursday show. So we're going to move to 3 shows a week. And the reason for that is primarily a couple of things. One, the 2-show format has worked very well, but I think we've struggled quite a bit with this one sort of challenge the last couple of years in particular, which is the last, 10 years, we have focused so much on what's new, what's emerging, what's startups, what's all these things. And we've been getting this overwhelming number of questions from people of like, hey, that's all cool and that's all interesting. And we can always come to you guys for sort of what's next. But, a lot of people's day jobs are, what can I do right now? Like either what can I learn right now? What can my company implement right now? What are some best practices for things that are right now? And so we've been trying to figure out, well, what's the best balance there between them? And I think what we're going to do is we're going to move to, Sunday will probably remain the Sunday perspectives. We may do some other things on Sundays as well, but mostly perspectives. So everything from, the connecting the dots stuff, job career advice, opinions and historical reviews, all that kind of stuff. The Tuesday show, I'm sort of calling it Umbrellas and Sunrises in the context of cloud. And really what it's going to focus on is we're still going to do some amount of interviews. We're going to really kind of try and focus more on solving today's challenges. So, what are things that if you're listening to the show, you can take it and you can go, I can do something right now. What are some learnings that we can take from people that are applicable right now? And then the Thursday show that I'm kind of tentatively calling On the Horizons is really going to be a little bit of an evolution of what the Wednesday show used to be. So the Wednesday show was always interviews. It was always sort of future-looking types of things, and we're still going to do that. I still think there's an appetite for that. The challenge of it is, there's probably going to be for, at least a few years or so until some economic things shake out and various stuff happens. Probably less VC funding or maybe sort of less number of VC, of startups that we've seen. But we are seeing this, huge number of things around AI. So the Thursday show, the sort of On the Horizon show, will probably be the place we'll put more of the AI shows because it's sort of future looking. We're going to put you and I have been talking about, we're both kind of in this new learning stage of, hey, you're trying to learn some stuff for your job, but you're also learning a lot of stuff around AI. I've been doing sort of the same thing in different areas. You and I are going to get back to doing more shows about what we've learned. We're likely going to move Cloud News of the Week from being just sort of like a segment to probably turning it into a Cloud News of the Month so that we can really kind of dive into some stuff. And then we're going to start doing some regular regular guests. So our hope is to have sort of a regular guest from AWS, guests from GCP, guests from Azure, not to necessarily just talk about what they've done, but sort of like what's going on in that space and what's new and so forth. So the hope is that we find a better balance between kind of all forward-looking stuff, all stuff that maybe is sometimes niche, and a little more of a balance between what you can do today, lessons you can learn, things that you can take from people that are kind of immediate, and then also continue to have that balance of like, hey, what's coming down the road, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, maybe hopefully not too far down the road. But that's at a high level. What have you been your thoughts in terms of how we're balancing new and old and some of these just sort of shifting trends?
Yeah, it's interesting to me because we've kind of prided ourselves over the years of being the emerging tech podcast.
Yep.
And but it's certainly, honestly, a certain amount of pressure comes with that then too. It's like, you got to be on the edge. You got to be figuring out what's next. And we're talking to a lot of early companies and, seed stages and coming out of stealth and, big announcements. And don't get me wrong, it's super fun and it's exciting. But I think at times it becomes exciting for us and at times maybe not as relevant to everyone's day jobs. And the podcast, I think some of its origins was all about learning and applying things that are applicable and that people can give back. And so, yeah, we're going to try and do a little bit better of a balance between practical and futures. I will say this, I'm just going to go ahead and call it out now. It'll be really interesting too, because we definitely want to start bringing in some more talking about the big hyperscalers and not just the big three. We want to start bringing in just more conversations around that. Hey, we'll see if we get AWS or not. AWS is a whole story. Buy us a beer sometime and ask us about AWS.
Exactly.
But also too, like you look at, if we look at some of our stats, the look ahead length shows, right? Like the look ahead length shows, like we said at the top of hey, we tried to originally be like 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes. The look ahead shows, we go 40, 50, sometimes an hour on those shows. And those actually do really well. And so we might also make some of the shows longer form instead of having the, Sunday and Wednesday always be the same, ish in length. Sunday shows may be shorter. Tuesday shows may be longer. Thursday shows might be shorter. We're definitely going to play around with that as well. And if anybody has any feedback, by the way, on that of, hey, I really kind of like the shows if they're this or they're this, let us know. We're definitely still looking for feedback as we play with this new format. Something else we'd also like to do is, we have some regulars. We have some guests that we've had on, we've got some 5-timer clubs and some other things like that. But, we definitely want to bring back some guests on a regular basis and start to play around with the format potentially of doing roundtables or something else like that. We've kind of nailed both the Sundays perspectives and interview styles over the years, and maybe it's time to go play with some other styles.
Yeah.
Shows.
Yeah. I think, the other thing, if you're listening to this, we've been putting a bunch of thought into this because again, what we're trying to ultimately do is, there is a piece of this that selfishly Aaron and I have always done the show as a reason for us to learn. So, we are to a certain extent, we're kind of seeing right now, the market feels a little bit confused. It's sort of in this weird state of it's kind of confused, partially because of the economy and partially because of, companies' budgets and all that sort of stuff. And like, what are they prioritizing? And then there is, there's still a certain amount of new technology that's always there. But, we feel like to a certain extent, maybe we're not, we're not covering enough things in sort of all the right ways. And so we're kind of going to experiment with this. Now, a couple of things I will say. So number one, we are very conscious of the fact that there are a lot of podcasts out there. You guys have a lot of choice. We appreciate you all, coming to the show every week and telling a friend and so forth. We know that, making a change to people's schedules sometimes can be, they might, I hear this all the time from people who go, well, on Monday I listen to this type of show and Tuesday I listen to this one, or Thursday, or on the weekends I listen to these. So we are very conscious that making a change to what's been the normal schedule, the Wednesday and Sunday, or even just the Wednesday, might be disruptive. And we're going to have to kind of find what that balance is. But we're appreciative that we've always tried to do shows that aren't necessarily just, like if you don't listen to it this week, it's irrelevant, right? And so, we always try and make shows that have a certain amount of evergreenness to them. So we're going to kind of keep an eye on how much we are potentially disrupting your schedules. Hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully the things that we're building and creating are worth your time. They continue to be worth your time. The second thing I will say is one of the things that we've learned over the years is probably the most important thing you can do for a podcast is consistency. It's, we've talked about, we've always been on Wednesdays really forever. Sundays, we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years, but there's always been a Sunday show. There's always been a Wednesday show. There are always roughly an amount of time. That last part, we're going to kind of play around with a little bit. But once we do move to this new format, you won't see us sort of bouncing around. Like, we are very much committed to the idea that once we sort of find something, and there might be a little bit of variation over the first couple of months, but it will be every week on a certain time, comes out every day, every specific day at a certain time, and you'll sort of know what it is. And so we're not gonna bounce around and be like, well, Sunday will be this sometimes, and Tuesday will be this sometimes, and Thursday will be this. It'll be, you'll be able to know what the Cloudcast is going to give you. So, that's sort of our pledge to everybody. We're trying to work through this because we know that people are getting their information in different ways. We want to try and make sure that we give it to you in ways that are most helpful. We know a lot of people come to the show to learn things, to, kind of be part of the community and so forth. So all those things we are super, super conscious of, and we've sort of learned the good and the bad of it over the last, 10 years or 12 years or 13 years, however many years we've been doing this. So anyways, just last piece of this, and I'll kind of wrap it up because I know Aaron's under the weather. Hopefully he makes it through the marathon being under the weather. But last piece of this, we will be rolling this out probably, it may be sort of the end of November. It may just start fresh in December. We wanted to give folks some amount of heads up about what we're changing. Just from seeing things in the news these days in tech, people don't like changes, unexpected changes. So we're kind of announcing it, hopefully maybe a month in advance. If you have any huge reservations about it, please let us know. show@thecloudcast.net is an email, at the Cloudcast.net on Twitter. There's lots of ways to find us and hit us up on this stuff. Let us know. Please don't do that thing where you go into like the Apple comments and just be like, these guys are jerk offs and whatever. And like, just hit us up directly. We'd love to have a one-on-one conversation with you. It doesn't do us any good just to have people sort of spam the stuff. If there's something in there that you're like, hey guys, you totally are forgetting this thing, or you're missing this thing, or, I have a whole series of stuff that's tied to whatever, let us know. We will do the best we can to kind of accommodate these things, but we're kind of trying to give you a heads up as far in advance as realistic. So that, we can get some feedback. Like, we might completely be forgetting something or just overlooking something or whatever. We've been talking about this for a long time, so I think we've got a lot of the bases covered, but that's kind of our thinking. Our hope is continue to give you really high quality shows, really high quality guests on a really consistent basis. We want to find some better balances just because the world has changed and aspects of tech have changed, but we're hoping all of this is net a very positive thing for the community, and people are gonna find sort of the right things for where they're at. So, Aaron, any last thoughts before I let you go and let you get back to resting and recovering before your big race?
One other last thing too. When we're talking about feedback, there's also the next phase after this, when we've been talking about potentially doing some video, potentially doing newsletter, expanding out in some ways. We would, if anybody has any thoughts on, positive or negative around any of that, has any feedback of if they'd like us to go in one direction or the other, let us know on that as well. Because once we kind of settle in to the new schedule, that's going to be the next thing on the horizon. So we are definitely going to be looking to expand out the offerings, and we're just trying to figure out, everything's an opportunity cost. Where do we want to focus on next? So if anybody has any feedback on that, we'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah. I think especially, newsletter is something we've been talking about for a while. It gives us a chance to be more direct with people. But again, we want to be conscious of that. We do feel like we're seeing more and more kind of independent newsletters that are very good out there. If we do that, we want it to be really high quality. The video piece is really the weirdest piece because there are tools out there that make the video piece easy, but I'm wondering if people, we've wondered this for a while, like, do people want aspects of the Cloudcast in video, or do you just want us to give you snippets? Do you want maybe a few of the shows as video because you like seeing some of the human interaction, but in general, you're like, look, man, I listen to podcasts, they're audio. That's what I want. I don't, TikTok is for TikToking and this is for, so, we'd kind of love to get your feedback on those two mediums in particular. Like, do you feel like we should be turning Cloud News of the Week into sort of the newsletter format, for example? Or, are there newsletters that you really like that you're like, oh man, if there was like a Cloudcast version of like this thing, we'd love that. Especially on the video side, because video it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of editing. We're not the prettiest faces in the world. You don't necessarily need to see our faces, but if you're like, hey man, I learn better when I can see things and there's visualization to it. It just works better. Let us know. We've gone a long time not doing video. There's some reasoning for that. It has to do with some early technology stuff, but like we mentioned, feedback is very much appreciated this time, and let's consider it sort of the feedback phase for the next few weeks or even for the next few months. So, all right, Aaron, I'm going to let you go, man. I appreciate you toughing it out for the last 20 minutes or so. Best of luck to you tomorrow. I know it's a big,
thank you.
It's a big race, both because of it's a huge achievement for all the training you do, but I know it has a sort of a special place in your heart because of your dad's service and his honoring at Arlington National Cemetery, and big thing for the Delp family. So best of luck to you. I'll be looking forward to it. We'll get some feedback hopefully next week on the show and how you did. But with that, folks, first Sunday perspective, I guess more than one person. It'll probably go back to being mostly me, but hopefully, some of those changes that we're making sound interesting to you. Again, let us know. Thanks as always for listening. Thanks for telling a friend, and thanks for helping us grow the community and put us in this situation where we're trying to figure out what's the next best thing, or what could be the next best thing. So thanks for that. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.